In the 1960s, an Australian physician by the name of Dr. Rex Newman was an osteopath, and he was often treating people with arthritis. But he had noticed over the years more and more people coming to see him, and this was of great concern. Why was the numbers constantly going up? And it wasn't until he himself also started to develop the symptoms of arthritis. And the common symptoms for arthritis is joint pain, swelling, night sweats, fatigue, and these are just the main ones. There are others, but these were the main ones. So he had developed all four, so he concluded he too had arthritis. As a doctor, he would start treating himself with the conventional medicine, but he realized it wasn't curing him, he was treating symptoms. So therefore, all his patients were going through the same thing. Every year he would have to increase the dosage to cope or combat the swelling and the joint pain. He wasn't happy with this. He wanted to find the real reason. So he started to research it. Now, from his studies, he also learned that boron was a huge part of metabolizing of calcium into plants. So he started to actually hone in on boron. Firstly, what he did, he looked at all the countries in the world that had the lowest rate of arthritis and why. So Israel was a country, New Zealand, and even parts of Australia had very, very low rates of arthritis. And he had also noticed that the content or the soil was rich in boron. So he started to conclude boron was the missing element. So he then decided that he would take 3 milligrams of boron a day to see what would happen. And lo and behold, within 1 month, everything had disappeared. The swelling had gone down, the joint pain was disappeared, no more night sweats, and he was no longer fatigued. He was absolutely ecstatic. He then wanted to also get his patients on boron. The problem was it was a hard sell because in Australia, boron was labeled as a poison. It was used as a pesticide to kill cockroaches. So it's very hard to convince people to take boron. He went to the universities, he went to the health authorities with his results, his research, and they all said, we're not interested. So he went back and said, okay, I will then manufacture my own boron. I will rebottle it and supplement it and make it look nice and pretty. He then started to give to his patients. And immediately his patients also, like him, started to significantly reduce all the swelling and joint pain. Within 5 years, he was selling up to 10,000 bottles a month. And the demand kept growing and growing and growing. At the end, he just could not keep up with the demand. So he decided, would another company be interested in mass producing this? So off he went to the big pharmaceutical companies. And the pharmaceutical companies flat out said, we will never ever produce a drug with boron in it because it's so cheap. We'd rather sell the expensive arthritis drugs because it makes us more profit. Flat out denied it because it just came down to which one made more money. But the pharmaceuticals companies also then realized if they don't stop this man, people may hear about this and then they would lose out on everything. So in 1981, the pharmaceutical companies petitioned the Australian health authorities to ban or relabel boron as a toxin. And they did exactly this. They made boron a toxin. So they immediately had to shut down Dr. Rex Newham, and they told him anytime he sold a bottle, the authorities would fine him $1,000. So imagine that. Is the Health Authority of Australia really that interested? I don't think so. So we're looking at a thing called boron, and you don't need much boron at all. Now, what happens when the body is very depleted in boron? Well, then you get a thing called hyperactive parathyroid. And what hyperactive parathyroid does, it starts mass-producing or overproducing certain hormones. And then these hormones makes the bone release more calcium. And this is where the problem lies, because as the bone releases more calcium, the bone tissue becomes softer and softer, and the joints itself, the capsules of the joints, start to become inflamed. And hence you get arthritis. And it's all because of the lack of boron. Once you start increasing the boron itself then allows more minerals to go back into the bone, like calcium, K2, and D3, which then re-strengthens the bone. Now, just before I go, here's an interesting fact. The Egyptians, the Egyptians again, they knew about this. So they were treating people with broken bones and fractures with mega dosage of boron because the healing was 3 or 4 times faster had they just left it alone. All right, so you may want to look into boron, and especially if you've got joint pains or arthritis. Thanks for listening.